So in 2009, I was laid off. Like many other Americans, I had lost my job. I went from having a paycheck on the 15th and the 30th, fully covered insurance, and then I was laid off. I had just started working, like 2-3 years in. I didn't have any money. I was broke, like dry, like nothing in the account. So I remember saying to myself, you know what? You're ambitious. I'm just going to set a goal, and in 30 days, I'm going to land a job. Not any job, the job I want that's destined for me, and I'm going to be turning down all these other offers because the job I want is going to come my way. Well, 30 days quickly turned to 60, 60 days quickly turned to 90, and before you knew it, I was considered a 99-weeker. And at that moment, I knew we were in a different recession. And I also knew that I had invested a lot of money in an education that I didn't think was going to go much of anywhere. Like, I knew I was at a dead still right there. It was during the housing crisis. People were losing their jobs everywhere, left, right. Homes were being repossessed. People were over the value of their homes. And I remember being a young person, just getting out of school, just being scared. I remember being in a state of depression and taking my mattress, dragging it into the living room, and watching TNT Charm starting at 8 a.m. in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon with a pack of double-stuffed Oreos, because that's what you do. I had to really find the self-motivation to pull myself together, become productive, and push through, and find purpose. You don't know, like when you don't have work, we tie our titles to work so much that it's so easy to feel like you don't have purpose. So I was able to find that purpose. We fast forward 10 years later. I'm here, I'm an entrepreneur, and I love my work. Like, I love my work. I get to work with long-term unemployed professionals, business owners. A lot of the professionals I work with have been laid off or lost work. They were with companies that they gave a lot of years to, decades to. And all of a sudden, their jobs are taken from them, and they have to reset, pivot, brush up on skills that they didn't even know they had to update or keep current. Resumes, cover letters, soft skills, hard skills, transferable skills, interviewing, and the hardest one, LinkedIn. I understood what they were going through, though. I understood the anxiety, the uncertainty, the fear, especially when you have responsibilities, right? So when I graduated, I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have kids. These are people that are like locked in their mortgage, like 30-year mortgage, I'm on year 25. I still have working years. I have kids that still need to go to college. So when I start working with my clients now, the first question I get asked them is, how many working years do you think you have? Because we live in a new industry, and this industry is telling us that if you think you have 10, 15, 20 years at one location in a job, you're wrong. Longevity in work is no longer that long. So we need to start developing new skills. You're going to have to be continuously educating yourself as we move forward. So what does your career roadmap look like? What's the plan? If I told you that you had 10 more years of working, what's your plan? And this is why I'm concerned with the state of work. And what I mean about the state of work is the ecosystem that we create in order to have that productive workforce creating innovation. And I know we have a lot of initiatives that are dealing with the K through 12 student population, but we got jobs that need to be filled now. And we cannot wait 10 to 12 years for Billy to graduate high school, then go figure himself out in college, and then come home and do the work. We're in a global economy, and if we're not continuously innovating at all points of a span of time, then we're going to be left behind. So what does work look like in the next 10, 15 years? And then how do we create a workforce that meets our future? How do we create access to good paying jobs that allow for work stability? How do we even make sure that our community can get jobs that drive upward mobility and see generational wealth? How can we make sure that we're able to retain talent in our communities so that we can have a viable tax base to be able to move things forward? These are true concerns that when I'm looking at my lens of work, that I see from every angle. So I want to tell you a story, and the story is about Bridgeport, Connecticut, and the significant role it's played in the accomplishments of work, policy, and innovation. All right? Located off the Long Island shore is Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's about 18.2 square miles, and it has access to rail, ferry, car. It's just an accessible place. Bridgeport has always been a hub of innovation, entrepreneurship, and a place for immigrants to go with skills since the dawn of time. Bridgeport, during the main industry years, was the manufacturing center. So it created corsets, typewriters. We created hardware that would go into other machinery. We were in the building that I have my business in is the sewing machine building downtown Bridgeport. That to me was a fascinating fact as I was doing my research in the building that the sewing machines that were being created. Bridgeport presented opportunity. Automobiles were being built here. So if all that is being created and manufacturing is growing, you become a place of work. And people were coming from all over to work. Manufacturing wasn't the only industry success to Bridgeport. Another thing that came out of Bridgeport was work. Work was being showed how we do work. So for instance, when World War I happened and we had to have federal money come here, we needed a blueprint. And Bridgeport became that blueprint, not just for union agreements, but for federal contracts and how did that look? In 1918, there was a strike, and in that strike, they were able to increase their wages, make sure immigrants could join the unions. They got equal wages for men and women. They were able to get a 5-day work week and an 8-hour work day. That is significant. That was a big contribution to work. And that started in Bridgeport. By the time the 1930s came around, Bridgeport had like 500 factories. Do you know what you have in a community with 500 factories? An ecosystem of transferable talent that no matter what job they leave, they can go and knock on another door and they have the skill set to be able to pick up and move and keep them working. We were like a talent bank. And then the New Deal came about. And the New Deal was an economic stimulus package right during the Great Depression, and it pumped money into Bridgeport and places similar to it. And what that money was able to do, now we can start funding jobs. When we have jobs and people are working, what do you do when you work? You spend money. It drives the economy. And the New Deal was a significant part of economic stimulus in Bridgeport. And I feel like we're in the midst of another crisis, and I think we need a better deal. The work the way we know it, disruptive, is going to continue. And yes, technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, self-driving cars, they do play a role in that. But we have to reimagine work. And when I talk about reimagining work, we have to think about careers moving faster and shifting faster. We have to rethink education, and places have to think about how they educate moving forward. We have to start tapping into communities and reach that unleashed talent that's full of informal and formal education that we just need to be able to pull from. We need to be prepared, and the pace of change is happening faster than you think. In the United States, work income and benefits are tied together. As we move forward and become innovative in thinking these new processes, we're going to have to really think of a new way that work and benefits the relationship. It's not doing us any good. The roles of universities and colleges will be imperative to the communities they serve, and they would be an awesome place to do community audits of informal and formal knowledge so that we know what programs we can create for our community. We can create accelerated programs with certifications if we're able to know what the knowledge in our community is, especially in a community like Bridgeport. And the reason why is because it's so rich with immigrants. And when I talk about informal and formal education, I'm going to give you a quick story. The other day I was driving down Ridge Street, which is right over there. I know Bridgeport. And I saw this man like going through, he was playing with an air conditioner, like just ripping it apart. I was like, what is this man doing to this air conditioning unit? This guy had he just knew that if I dig in here, my need is I need to go to the scrapyard, and I'm gonna pull the copper that's inside of the air conditioner out for my survival, right? How many more people have this kind of knowledge that don't have degrees or college educations? We need to tap into that knowledge. And then we also need to make sure that we use our community and faith-based organizations to relay the message, because people trust those places. And as we attempt to create solutions to move our workforce forward, we have to be bold, we have to be daring, and we have to make sure that they are tooled to meet industry needs. And as we create tables and facilitate meetings for new processes and new solutions, we can no longer put new innovation in old framework. That will not work, that will not move us forward, and we will be stuck in global innovation. Thank you.